Lagos residents in the Etiosa local government on Sunday protested the failure of the election management body INEC to conduct rescheduled elections in some polling units in the area. Arise correspondent Oba Adeoye monitored the peaceful demonstration.
The Independent National Electoral Commission had listed some polling units in 6 areas of Lagos State where the rescheduled election was to take place on Sunday. These include Oshodi, Okha, Etiosa, Surulere, Ikate, and Koshofe. According to the Commission, the elections became imperative because of violence and the late arrival of materials in the affected areas on Saturday. So the poll was to start at 8 a.m. on Sunday, but that was not to be in some areas visited for checks.
What do we want? We want votes! What do we want? We want votes!
In Etiosa, a group of residents converged on the gate of the Lagos State Model Primary School, Lekki, where the collation of results for the area was taking place. Their anger is that INEC has refused to show up in the unit where the elections were to take place.
In our own polling booth today, we have not voted since yesterday. You understand? At Shogotedo, that is in Ward 5, 064, which is United States. We have not. And again, in primary school there, that's Shogotedo, there we have almost 10 polling units there, 7 votes, but it's 015 and it's 016 and 017. You understand? They did not control their vote, and that's where we have the most population, more than 5,000 voters there.
We were told yesterday that by 8, those places the election was not conducted, that it will be conducted today, 8 to 12. We were there. We got a number from one of the people there, which is the voters from the INEC. We called them, we had the ladies, and the number is here. They said they are coming. For over 4 hours, they are coming. So when they said the calls are coming in various places, they shut their phone.
Despite the heavy presence of armed security personnel in the area, these protesters insist they are not going to leave the scene until a top electoral officer addresses them about when the rescheduled poll would hold in the affected units.
We want to vote. We have not come to fight. We have not come for any violence. The only thing we want is we want to vote.
After we voted and counted our votes, then INEC officials that were there, they saying that they could not get the password to be able to upload the informations.
Now they want to go ahead with collating the votes from all the wards in Etiosa without addressing all the people who have not voted. That's number one. Number two, there are multiple polling units where there was suppression, where there was violence, where there was disruption. And by law, in those polling units where those things are happening and we have that evidence, they're supposed to cancel those polling units and run the election again. I think the days are gone when Nigerians will just sit by and allow people in authority to do whatever they want without being held accountable.
Meanwhile, in Amu Ward of the collation of election results continued on Sunday afternoon at the designated office. While party representatives react differently to the conduct of the exercise on Saturday, many ad hoc staff members of the commission waited for several hours in the queue to receive their wages. While the party representatives of the People's Democratic Party and the Labour Party have reservations about the exercise in the area, the representative of the All Progressives Congress has a different assessment.
Well, there is a traces of credibility in the conducting of the election from the angle of INEC. But from the experience we had yesterday, from the ruling party in the state, is pathetic. Situation whereby, like as I speak to you, there is one of our party agents by name Ufoma who is still held hostage at Abule-Ado.
We thought that this was going to be a super election, but obviously we have been disappointed. I tell you for truth, yesterday we just discovered that a lot of the POs, the presiding officers, didn't have the passcodes to BVAS to upload the results. And that's because the SPOs did not give them the passcode. It's a deliberate act.
Well, we thank God there's no problem within Amuwo axis. We don't have any problem, any crisis. I wouldn't say much about that, but what I knew was that personally, I render assistance to the INEC with my own personal vehicle, moving them from the center, Festa College, to their various polling units.
It is not clear yet if the rescheduled election will still take place before the final collation and announcement of results by INEC in Abuja, but many Nigerians may be disenfranchised eventually and not having a say in who becomes their leaders at different levels. Oba Adeoye, Arise News, Lagos.
We're now joined by Bukola Idowu, Head Kimpact Development Initiative, and Victor Okha, a political analyst. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you saw the report by Oba Adeoye there. That was Etiosa local government area, and just talking about the general conduct of the elections in these areas. I know you've been with us this weekend, so you've been able to monitor what's been going on, not just in Lagos State, but across the nation with regards to voter turnout. We talked about that a few minutes ago. The voter suppression, violence, incidents of the preparedness of INEC, or perhaps the lack of it. I'd like you to just give an overview based on what you've seen, what you've observed, and the reports we've had so far on the election so far.
Okay. There's a new tribe in Nigeria. And that's the youth tribe. And that tribe has strengthened what was our former national, our old national anthem. Though tribe and tongue may differ, but in brotherhood we stand. I find, the voter turnout this time has been, well, in many places you might say not as much compared to the total registered voters and all that, but the demographics of the voting population has changed drastically. And you find a lot more people are willing to go vote and defend their votes. Another thing that's happened is when you find a situation now where underdogs begin to show strength, it therefore means that it's no longer business as usual. It's no longer just about parties. It's now more about individuals. The voter is more discerning now than before. So, and for me, that's very, very positive. So for me, these are the new things that have come out of this election. It's much more competitive. It's hard to say who's going to emerge at the end of the day. So, and the fact that for once, money didn't really play a big role just shows that, people had an opportunity to actually express themselves through the ballot box.
Beyond money, Mr. Feni said something around BVAS. So in terms of giving the actual numbers, because when we talk about voter turnout, when we talk about trends, a change from trends as we've seen in previous elections. Lagos has a case point where we've seen the Labour Party come up strongly in some APC strongholds. Look at Oshodi, Ikeja, areas that you wouldn't have thought any other party besides APC would have held sway. And the conversation then comes up beyond money inducement, BVAS. INEC did say it was a game changer. Would you consider that a big factor?
I'm not even going to talk about Lagos. Let's talk about Kano. The registered voters there, I think about 6 million or thereabouts. And then those that actually came out to vote were about just over 800,000. In the past, we would assume that you would get about 3-4 million votes. And so the big question is, where are these, were they ghosts that were voting? So BVAS is, if you like, the hero of this election. I agree totally, because now, I hope I'm not wrong, but I think the BVAS has been used for the first time. It was in the staggered elections that they started using it, but some of us are using it for the very first time. And so when it was put in front of me, to take my picture after accreditation, I then knew that the story had changed. Because obviously, if you claim that a person is voting, after looking through the name, I'm going through the process now, you check your name on the list, then they confirm that you're actually there, they take your picture before they hand the ballot paper over to you. So unless you're going to be cooking up images and all that, the BVAS has certainly changed.
Well, Mr. Okha, I disagree with you.
Okay.
Because the major report that we have heard from the various observer groups,
yes,
many of them are there who observed the election.
Yes.
Specifically, complained about BVAS failing in many instances. And in fact, INEC officials, ad hoc staff, not knowing how to operate the BVAS. In some cases, they were asking people, who had come to vote, whether there was anybody who would know how to handle the BVAS. But let's go to Bukola.
I have an explanation.
I'll come back to it.
Yeah, okay.
Let's bring into the conversation Bukola Idowu, who is in our Abuja studio. Bukola Idowu, are you with us? Okay, good morning.
Yes, I'm with you.
Well,
good morning.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. Two major issues in this election. The concern about data. We're told that it will be data-driven by BVAS, by IREV, and yet the political parties have been complaining about the uploading of results as expected. INEC having promised that it will do so real-time and everything will be online. But we've not seen that. The thing we have had since yesterday is glitches, and INEC engineers working on it. And then secondly, BVAS, which was said will be the main revolutionary thing. In the statement issued by INEC at paragraph 2, we were told, BVAS was used successfully during off-cycle election. Now that it's being used in general election, INEC did not anticipate that there will be issues, but that those issues are not as a result of sabotage or intrusion. And their engineers are working on that. Why is it that INEC did not train its ad hoc staff to be able to handle BVAS? And why did they not anticipate the fact that in a general election, there will be a higher demand, there will be higher pressure, and that the server may not be able to cope? What are we dealing with? Incompetence?
Well, Dr. Abati, I think...
Please go ahead.
Okay, so Dr. Abati, I think the issue here is when we start comparing mango with banana. And that's that comparison has really deceived INEC, and so that has really make a mess at some point in time about this election. I won't say the election was a total mess, but of course, at some particular instances, the conduct has not been encouraging. What am I trying to say? You see, when we went to Edo and BVAS was tested, we went to Ondo, BVAS was tested, then we went to Anambra, it was used in Anambra, and then we came back to conduct election in Ekiti and Osun, where BVAS was legally used, because as at then we already had the new electoral act of 2022 in place. And then we thought, and I think that gave INEC a false hope that look, I mean, we've tested BVAS, it has been a game changer. While I agree BVAS supposed to be a game changer, but we've also forgotten that we were using smart card reader before, and at the staggered election, smart card reader worked effectively. The moment it was deployed nationally, it became a disaster at some point. We started seeing incident form being used. Now, the same thing, and we warned INEC, we released a report, and some of the red flag we raised, we begin to see that there. See, look, we said let's draw trend. Anytime you deploy nationally, we've always seen glitches. And these are some of the reasons. Number one, do you know that some of these people were trained not at the right time according to INEC timetable? So they had a hurried training, and at the same time, right there at that training, they were supposed to be given the password that they need to upload at IREF. What exactly happened that these people could not get the password is another operational audit we need to do for INEC. Number two, we also discovered in some places that as little, for instance, in Lugbe here in one polling unit, where people voted, voting concluded, but there was no result sheet. How do you explain that here in Abuja, no result sheet? So it is not really, for me, this, you can give a reason for the glitches for not uploading at some particular point in time as glitches, but even things that has nothing to do with technology. What was responsible for ink pads to get finished or not being available in some places? What was responsible for the result sheet not available in some places? So this is beyond technical glitches. However, when you look at BVAS, and we said in fact in our scenario when we are playing the scenario, we said BVAS is going to be a game changer. However, we have seen a loophole, because all you need to do is that the moment the results get to BVAS, the moment they are able to snap it and upload the form EC8A to the IREV, there is nothing you can do. It has gone public. And we said that, look, INEC, you need to protect your infrastructure against cyber attack, number one. And if what is happening to IREV is cyber attack, they need to let us know and what exactly is going on. Because one challenge we have seen is that, for me, I mean, I'm a part of the generation that when we had our WAEC, we were generation of F9, P7. And I say, in terms of strategic communication, INEC has actually gotten like about P7 here. It took them ages to communicate to Nigeria that, look, something is wrong with BVAS, and that is not really good for us. And if it is cyber attack, come back, we have said there is possibility, because that was, I mean, there was an attempt in Ekiti, there was an attempt in Osun, and then we said there is likely going to be a greater attempt in the general election. So we feel, in terms of communication, they need to let us know. And because what they have done now is to open the space up for a lot of misinformation and disinformation online, and almost everywhere we begin to see results flying, because the IREF is supposed to be a place where we are supposed to get authentic and verified results. As of yesterday, as an organization, when what was uploaded on IREF was like about a bit above 20,000, we started going there, and then we begin to see a lot of blur results, very blurred, that we can't even extract, we can't even write it out. And I think this is not really good for us as a nation, more especially that we have an election that the people are ready, the international organization and the international community are actually ready and looking at us, and this is going to be an encouragement to the rest of the African country, most especially when we begin to have a lot of military coups in Africa. So we thought this is going to be an encouragement, and then this is where we are after 7 consecutive elections, and that is not really good enough.
Well, Mr. Okha, you seem to have a different view. You think BVAS is hero of the election?
Well, for me, there's, in of itself, nothing wrong with the technology. I mean, that ATM in the banking industry is obviously a game changer. What people do with it afterwards is a different matter. Now, there's something, because I actually voted and I moved around as well. One of the information I got, particularly from Lagos, says that at the last minute, some NYSC some of the ad hoc staff backed out. And so people came in very late, and they didn't have enough time to train them. Secondly, the BVAS by itself has not, okay, there are other areas. He talked about loopholes. This is now manipulation by human beings. For instance, the BVAS, you're supposed to have 2 per polling unit. The first one has, I think, the first 13 alphabets, first 13, and then the second 13 will be in the second BVAS, so you will have 2 lines. And so in some polling units, whether deliberately or whatever, now this has nothing to do with the BVAS, remember, it's a human thing, and this is where we are as human beings, where we begin to manipulate technology and all that. They would deliver only 1, and the question is, so what happens? Who fills in the remaining, 13 alphabets, people who are supposed to be there? So you begin to find elements like this begin to play. Now, when we see things like this, then it is whether politicians with INEC or INEC deliberately trying to exploit or take advantage of manipulate rather technology. You can use it however. So I still maintain it's a game changer, but what we need to look at now is a human element, because it's always there in everything that we do.
But what I hear you, Mr. Kai, just going back to what Doctor said, it is a game changer, but if you have a system and you don't train the people how to use it, it's as good as not having it at all. It's as good as it being useless. So whilst, yes,
the training element, the one I know, I speak about facts that I have, not the ones I don't have.
Yes.
So one of the information I heard, and like I said, was that some of the NYSC persons backed down. I was already too late. So I'm sure it's possible. They may have been adequately trained, but some of them developed cold feet at the last minute, and so you had to fill in that gap, because obviously you're not going to say that people are not going to man those things, and that created that.
All right, so moving away from that, because I'm sure there was provision made for the fact that it's human beings that will operate it.
Obviously,
that has to be put in terms of the general risk assessment of the use of BVAS. That's why it's, for me, it's not strong enough. They know that human factor has a play in the success of the usage of BVAS. But moving away from that, another challenge that we had in BVAS, it actually happened at my polling unit. And a number of places, and Mr. Ido, I would like to pose this question to you both. It happened at my polling unit, a number of polling units in Lagos, in Rivers State, across Nigeria. People complained that when it was time to transmit the results, after we'd all witnessed the counting of the votes, the election officers, whether it be NYSC ad hoc staff or INEC officials, were saying that they could not transmit. I mentioned it earlier today. They said it was network issue. In fact, in my polling units, we offered to give them to hotspots. Many of us had different providers and none of them worked, but they were working on our phones. Then they said it was a server issue. Then they said, okay, we cannot do it here. I don't know whether at their collation center, there was a special internet provision there that they wanted to go there to go and transmit the results, which sparked of hanky-panky, which sparked of, in terms of the trust of people of the process, it brought up a lot of questions. So these are some of the issues with BVAS that we could challenge that thought that, yes, BVAS was meant to be a game changer, but in this election, it wasn't allowed to, we didn't see that happen because of a lot of manipulations. Maybe let me start with Mr. Idowu first of all, to just respond to that. I don't know if you got reports about that, or perhaps in your findings or monitoring, you saw this happen in a number of units. What's your view on this?
So for us, we've done extensive research and on BVAS, and then we came out with our report and said, look, this is what you are likely going to face. Number one, I go back to communication. Now, number one, you will remember INEC was consistently saying that BVAS don't need network. Now, later, when people started querying that, they said, no, what we meant is that BVAS don't need network to accredit, but we need network to upload to the iRev or to the server. Now, and again, this is where the challenge is. So you cannot imagine if right there in the heart of Lagos, from our report, of course, we deploy over 1,200 observers across the country. And then from some of our reports, what you said, we got those reports where election was done and then there was no network and they said it was not uploading. However, this is the challenge here. You need to see, this is not basically about human error alone, and I think this is basically about management and project management. I am one of the people that believe the work of INEC has nothing to do with, putting a lot of academicians in that particular place. The work around our election is simply about project management, administration, ability to organize events. As of December, we don't even have enough ad hoc staff because you're supposed to train these people at least 3 times to get familiar with BVAS, and at the same time, ability to be able to troubleshoot at the first instance before you call for help is also key for these ad hoc staffs, and we don't have that. So now, it is what we have now is that you have a situation where, number one, some of these people could not operate BVAS effectively. Number two, you operate it at the end of the day for some locations, not all, for some locations. Then you find that difficult to upload. Now, for those that upload, they find it difficult to even see it there. Now, this is, I will move to our second projection. Our second projection here is this. When we have issues like this, we are coming back to situation we had in Osun, where judiciary is likely going to determine the outcome of this election in some polling units, because we are already playing with the case of overvoting. I think discrepancy between the figure in BVAS and as recorded at the polling unit in form EC88 and what you are likely going to have on the server. So this is another challenge. We are entering a legal battle now that we see in the case of Osun. But in all, I agree, BVAS supposed, and let's underline that, supposed to be a game changer. And also, if you have seen the budget of INEC, this technology take greater percentage of that particular budget, and then we will now begin to have this. It is not encouraging, and I think as a nation and as INEC, we can do better.
Okay, let's talk about the concerns raised hitherto and things flying around as regards the INEC rec in Lagos. Calls for him to be put out there, to be removed. Even before the elections. The circumstances also surrounding this transmission, because what we are hearing is that some people compromised the system, some people that had leanings, a partisan leaning compromised the system. The fact that there was a network shutdown, in Lagos, Rivers, and the role some governors played when they were being seen around collation centers. People have been talking about all of this. And people are also calling out INEC. That is so much a shambolic job. The INEC should bury their head, in a lot of shame for all of this, because they gave reassurances that it is this IRFs and this BVAS that was going to, tip the balance as regards giving us credible elections. What will you say about all of these points I've raised?
Well, very valid points. The issue here is how effective are our laws. I'll give an example. For instance, the First Citizen broke an obvious law that had penalties, which is don't display your, what do you call it now, your ballot paper. What are the consequences for it?
He has immunity on that section.
No, I understand that. But immunity is not an excuse for impunity. If I may excuse me, you understand what I'm saying? For want of a better phrase. And then why am I saying this? People have been known to come to polling stations, for instance, to influence or even wearing. I'm not going back to Abiola and in this case. You remember the case of him wearing the agbada and all. But we saw cases. I know one, for instance, in Koshofe here, where a mayoress, I'm going to say so, came to the polling station with a party vehicle with logo and everything. I was attempting to influence what was going on. And people challenged her and all that. And she was just the effrontery, the audacity and all that. And then there are no consequences for bad behavior. This has gone on for too long. There's so much impunity among the politicians. Now the question is, the law enforcement agents are there. Why are they there? What is their purpose? So we make laws, but how effective are these laws? How do we enforce them? Because it's all there. The right laws are there, but how do we enforce them? And that's the reason why these things have gone on for so long. And that is the reason why, even when you have something like the BVAS and everything rightfully in place, for me, I understand that with every innovation or every disruptive innovation, particularly at the beginning, you have teething problems, and then it gets better with time. You don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. By itself, it's very good. But the human element, what are the consequences? We know the consequences, but how do we ensure that people are punished for bad behavior? That is the underlying problem here. Does INEC have how do I put it now? Are they willing to enforce, these laws to the letter, or are they just, this is just there for the sake of it? Is it selective victimization? If you find an ordinary person breaking these laws or manipulating the process and all that, obviously they'll make an example of them. But when the big men do it, nothing happens. And I think that's where we need to start from.
All right. Let me put it like this. INEC has made it very clear that INEC cannot be busy organizing elections and at the same time be responsible for the enforcement of laws, which is why INEC has consistently appealed to the National Assembly that we need an electoral offenders commission. Okay. INEC has always supported that. INEC has said, look, allow us to focus on our job. Let us have an electoral offenders commission that will deal with electoral offenses. But I take your point. One of the major issues we have had in this electoral process is the blatant violation of the Electoral 2022. Although we have always made a point that even the politicians themselves and the law enforcement agencies, is either they have never read the law or they do not even have a copy of the Electoral Act. So we're just flying blind. But let me come to you, Bukola Idowu. Your NGO is youth-focused. And we've been talking about, okay, that youth bulge, the enthusiasm of the youths within the age bracket of, say, 18 to 39. But isn't there some ambivalence about the role of Nigerian youths in this election? We've seen them, yes, going out to vote, but are these not the same people? Showing up at polling stations in Surulere, for example. I saw one young man there. He was the one threatening people that, in fact, if you don't vote for our party, something will happen to you. That's a Nigerian youth, the same Nigerian youths that we're praising. The person who attacked Ifidi Bina Jennifer in Surulere is a young man that stabbed her in the face. The people snatching ballot boxes, these are people now. The young people, the characters that the EFCC arrested in Abuja, transferring money, doing electronic money transfer. These are young people. So, shouldn't we qualify this our fulsome praise for the enthusiasm of the Nigerian youth?
Doctor, I think we have to look at it this way. Why a lot of us are not happy with INEC this morning, but you will still find out that you have a lot of INEC officials that also did exceptionally well and that needed to be even be commended. Why some really have done pretty badly. And I think it's the same thing for us as a nation, so that we don't really generalize the totality of Nigerian youth as also being perpetrating this kind of picture you just painted. Of course, we know that out of, for instance, within that age bracket, we have like about close to like about 38% of on the registered voter, which talks about a lot of millions of Nigerian youth. And as we can see in this election, we can actually say that the totality of the Nigerian youth were actually misbehaving in this. Of course, I agree. It's just the picture we paint, and when people generalize the Nigerians are like this abroad. It is not all Nigerians that do Yahoo, for instance. It is not all Nigerians that do engage in cybercrime. So why some people did what they did, but I still want to say that for us, one of the things that positive we took out of this election is that we have a lot of first-time voters who are young people, and that alone need to be encouraged. And the other dangerous side of it is that they are coming to vote for the first time in an election that that could not encourage them to come back in the near future. However, with what we have seen, I also want to say, Doctor, that we need to now begin to have a rethink about our value as people, as a nation, as a state, as a nation, and that we need to now begin to interrogate that value. Because whether we like it or not, it is becoming a systemic thing. You know, it's becoming like a capture that people just want to use certain set of people to do what they can do. For instance, these people, like you rightly said, we saw that video, we reported it about that intimidation that if you are not voting for a particular party, we don't want to see you here. But I also want to say that if you go to some other places in Lagos where you see young people putting things together, offering their hotspot, offering their data for INEC to upload, assisting in putting canopy in place, and that is also commendable. But though we also feel that those who have for one thing should also be dealt with, but at the same time, I want to say young people are also done pretty well, but it depends on the side we are looking at. But in terms of turning out and the first-time voter that we have seen, I think some of them also done well. Why we also have bad eggs, but it also means we have to begin to rethink our value as people. And I think, again, if you permit me, we have to look deeply into a lot of principles, because for what we are doing now as a nation, but I think after the election, we can have a national dialogue and look at this, because what we are doing now is we are just removing cobwebs. And I think we need to kill the spider that caught this cobweb. And these are a lot of things we need to put in place. Number one, we as people. Number two, INEC went to this election with a lot of trust deficit. And what they have done is to complicate the issues now, because do people trust INEC? Number two, our political structure. Now, up to now, we expect that, Doctor, you mentioned about Election Offense Commission. We expect that that commission will be in place for the 2023 election. Why did we have that delay in the National Assembly up to this time that we are not going into this election with that? Then the last thing I will mention is this. We need to look at INEC holistically, and I think this is the time we need to have that conversation of unbundling INEC. Do we need, because as it is now, INEC conduct election, INEC handle logistics, INEC prosecute. You want INEC to prosecute electoral offenders. You want INEC also join in all the litigations. We need to now begin to say, okay, probably we unbundle them and let them focus on one aspect.
Mr. Adewa, I want to come back to you, most of the points you raised. Number one for me will be the role the governors are playing in getting to collation centers and the blatant disregard, for results of the people at collation centers. We've seen most of the sheets. You can see the way they use Pyro, Tipex to alter the sheets, which a lot of people say, this is bad. And also, the system collapse that happened in Lagos and Rivers that impeded the uploading through BVAS. Because when you look at it, people that are tech savvy, I am tech savvy, we know it was not supposed to take that long. In fact, in Rivers, they complained that they didn't get the password. So who took the password in the first place? And also INEC officials at first saying that they didn't promise that they were going to upload the presidential elections on the IREV. And when INEC saw that interview went viral, that people were already questioning that, then they issued a statement afterwards saying that there were glitches everywhere. I want you to talk through all those things, please.
So I think number one thing we need to understand, and I think the guest in the Lagos studio made mention of immunity should not be a reason for impunity. And whether you like it or not, I think the governors have done more harm than good in our electoral process. We can't take that away. most of the structures you talk about that we say, oh, this one doesn't have structure. They are talking about the governor's structure. They are talking about their activity at the state level, at the ward level. They are talking about what they will do in some interior part of their state and the capture they have over that particular place. Now, the painful thing is that this election will have moved us closer to a more will have moved us closer to where we have citizen taking ownership of the democratic process and move us, top notch a bit in terms of our democratic practices. But this is the issue here. Why we cannot say categorically, and this is what we need to investigate, because when you come to the collation center, you have to be the accredited agent of your political party. So if, and I said if it is confirmed that those governors are not the accredited agent of their political party, they have no business staying there. And this is where we now begin to look at your authority as an election official at that particular place. It is not out of place to walk any unauthorized person in that particular place out and say, excuse me, sir, your excellency, you are not supposed to be here. And that is why you also have security agencies there. INEC did promise us, and we had an engagement with the security agency. And one of the things that they are constantly saying is that even there is no political office holder that day that will go anywhere with their retinue of their security aides. So what it means is that the security agency there, the electoral officers at that collation should have done what they need to do. I think people just need at some point to stand up and then do the right thing. Why this is already a potential for litigation. And I think we need to begin to look at that, because in the past we have seen a lot of intervention of the judiciary in determining who become winner. And what I am beginning to see now is that we are going to see it climb a bit higher even in 2023 election. Why that is established? It is absolutely wrong for governors to be there. Number two, it is, like I said, you see, when INEC came out and say, and then they said that in Chatham House, they said that a lot of times in Nigeria, that we are ready for the election. We are 100% ready. And in all honesty, and I think they have everything they needed. They needed cash. They approached the CBN make the provision available so that the people that we move the election material are not, they don't have any excuse. Everything. Then President Buhari went to the US and told the whole world that everything INEC needs are being provided. INEC did not come out to say no. We don't have all this. Even when we knew that, look, inflation might likely impact, INEC did not come out. I don't know. There is nowhere INEC came out and said, look, this is, we are not ready. They told us they are ready. So this is not acceptable. And again, when you say people backed out, and that is why I said the problem of INEC is about project management. See, if you need 1,000 people to do a particular job as sensitive as our election, it is not out of place to have about 60% above that number and well-trained, so that you have a pool of reserve. You don't go into a match, for instance, you go into a World Cup and you say you don't have a reserve team. And you said, and then you keep giving an excuse that, oh, my major striker is injured and there is nobody to come in. Haba, when there is no limit placed by you or by the Electoral Act to say, look, this is the maximum number of ad hoc officials you should employ. No, you need to do more and have reserve. So if these people backed up, you call on the reserve. And again, we've said it several times that, look, why do you need to get coppers that you train in here and there? I must tell you, let's take it from the time of Professor Jega, Atayiru Jega. Now, coppers were trained. And then every election, and that was 2015. Coppers were trained in 2015. The people that conducted, Anambra election, the people that conducted Edo election, Ondo, Ekiti election, Anambra election, those coppers. Do you know if we have maintained this set of people? I'm not, of course, doing you are just doing a refresher, because at some point they have built capacity. You are not training afresh. If you are training afresh, it is not going to be like massive. And that is what we have seen. As of December, they've not really started training deeply. And one thing you need to know again is that while you train, even don't forget that in January they are still distributing, and we are still getting delivery of some BVAS that needed to be configured, and they needed to train them.
Yes.
So what I have seen, Rufai, if you ask me, that happened is that some of these people were trained hurriedly, and you don't expect top-notch performance from people you already trained a few weeks to the election or few days to the election. You are not going to get top-notch. But they have no excuse, because they came out to tell us they were ready.
All right, thank you, Mr. Idowu. And I'll come to Mr. Okha just as a follow-up in terms of just looking at or evaluating the performance of the coppers or INEC staff and their ad hoc staff in the conduct of this election. One of the things that, aside the training on how to use BVAS, was also a sense of them not owning or taking control of their polling unit. They were not empowered, because some of them couldn't speak to perhaps those who were not meant to be in their polling unit, who came to cause trouble or were just there and were not supposed to be there. Like a case in point, you mentioned, Mr. Idowu, what happened in Rivers State, and saying that the security officials ought to be able to call a sitting governor to order if he was not meant to be there. Who would have had the temerity or the powers to walk out a sitting governor? The Labour Party in a tweet had asked INEC to call Governor Wike of Rivers State to order, who they said allegedly was manipulating votes in Rivers State. These are allegations that ought to be investigated, but the INEC staff on ground could not even manage the process or tell, are you going to tell a sitting governor to move out of your space? And then talking about immunity not being a reason for impunity. Yes, let's look at the president having immunity. We look at, Governor Wike having immunity. How about the AGF? How about Senator Orji Uzor Kalu, who also displayed how they voted? Do they have immunity too? Who is going to, Rufai had talked about the fact that there are no consequences, particularly with special VIP members of society. Who is going to hold them to account? Will the consequences apply? Will they get the fine of 100,000 naira or 3 months imprisonment as stipulated in the Electoral Act? So who are the people that are going to hold them to account? I'd like Mr. Okai to speak to this. Empowering the people who are the units, INEC staff, the security operatives who will not look away when infringements like this are happening. Who takes responsibility for this, and what happens afterwards?
Thank you very much. Now, again, I will always speak about what I know, starting from there, and then we can make recommendations. The particular polling unit where I voted, the copper there was very much in control. Some people have leadership traits and qualities, and they're able to. But what empowered him the most, and this is my recommendation, is the voters on ground. I told you about a polling unit where a mayoress, a head of a local government area, went and was just trying to throw her weight around and all that. But people called her to order. Okay? So I think it is the responsibility of voters. I mean, the security agencies, we know. Many of them are lily-livered. These are people who just go around with the politicians, and a lot of them are there, but they have responsibility without corresponding authority. I say so not because they don't truly have, the uniform itself should be an authority that should be able to help them do things, but it's just there, And so it is the citizens that should be able to take responsibility. If you're in a polling unit and the governor comes, at that point, you can, and that's where we need that boldness. Maybe we need to begin another form of sensitization as well, to let voters know that nobody has a right to come to your polling unit and then begin to decide or dictate what goes on there. I don't see a governor ordering anyone to beat anybody at the polling unit. There are cameras there. You know, I tell you what, this is one of this citizen journalism starts here. It's a power. You understand what I'm saying? And so, whether you know it or not, I mean, things that are done secretly, even amongst people who are in a closed circle, tend to leak out. How do they get out? Obviously, one way or another, you consciously or unconsciously, these things are being recorded. And so I expect that as citizens, at all times, we hold our phones, and when people like that come, we take the videos or the pictures or whatever and spread them around. If we're waiting for the police to do it, nothing will happen. Instead, what I would do is take the incidents of, if it's the governor, the police officers that are around, record them and post it out there. Call them out in a manner of speaking. That is the way to go. Otherwise, if we're waiting, these people come in there, they throw their weights around. On election day, all governors, all party, candidates are equal with all citizens. You know, that's an awareness that we need to create and let people know. You don't come to a polling station and dictate anything. At that point, you are the same with every other person. You are seeking re-election, and it's not about you, it's about the vote at that point in time. So that's what I expect. And then, as for the coppers, or the ad hoc staff, the citizens will empower them. They have to. I saw it happen. Because when people were trying to harass the young man that was in our polling unit, everybody around shouted the others down and said, go and sit down and let the young man do his job. And he was empowered and he became bold and he did what he needed to do. I think that that's the way to go, and this is an agenda we need to set that should be carried on and let people have that awareness, going especially into the next election.
Okay, I have a question for both of you,
yes.
Bukola Odowu and Mr. Okha. I don't know who will go first. Earlier on, I talked about how INEC is overburdened, and INEC cannot deal with elections, and at the same time, they're looking for electoral offenders. However, part of the problem we have in this election, which the PDP has pointed out, which the Labour Party has pointed out, which the APC has also alluded to, is that there seems to be some kind of collusion between returning officers in the states with regard to the transmission of results to the headquarters, and that BVAS results are not transmitted to the server because of an attempt to collude one way or the other and manipulate the results. APC has complained about fears of manipulation. Labour Party has done so. PDP has also done so. Now, Section 120 of the Electoral Act, subsections 1 to 6, prescribes strict penalties for INEC officials that may be involved in any act of collusion. And INEC, in that regard, can discipline his own staff who have erred. But is there any guarantee that all of these INEC officials who fall under the definition of dereliction of duty, would they ever be sanctioned? Because that Section 120 of the law prescribes very strict penalties, including fine, including 36 months imprisonment for violating the law. Do you think there's any hope that any INEC official will be punished? Let's start with you, Bukola Odowu.
So, Doctor, and I think we started with what the last question that he answered about the boldness of the ad hoc official, and then again, who has the temerity to tell a sitting governor to go out. Now, and I will tie that to what you have raised, Dr. Abati. Now, we tracked, because one of the things we tracked our organization, what we've been doing is also to track and document cases of electoral violence, and at the same time, come up with strategy to be able to mitigate. Now, in 2019 general election, after 2019 general election,
the old parties are very experienced at rigging, manipulation, and they know the game very, very well. As I watched it, I just said, my initial reaction is this is preemptive, but it's not peculiar to PDP. I was at the Collusion Center yesterday in Yaba, And so I heard, as the results were coming out, the lady from, the Labour Party also, protested and contested. Yes, I didn't get her name, but, she immediately raised objections to the figures, gave her counter figures, and in the end, it's like INEC is obviously going to say to you, if you don't agree with the figures, then you're free to go to court. So what we just saw now, I think, is a situation where, the parties are each trying to stake their claim and be preemptive so that, nothing goes awry in a manner of speaking. We have not heard the last of this yet. I'm sure that APC will come up with its own counter as well. And I am also expecting that Labour and even NMPP, why not, would come and say the same. So, but we'll have to wait and see. And like Dr. Bati has said, at the end of the day, INEC in the first instance decides, and then the court, as a last resort, will give us what the final results are. But we'll have to wait and see. But one thing we must do is urge calm, because when all the parties go like this, then it tends to inflame, the polity, everywhere. And the general public. So I would urge that we stay calm and wait until the final result is announced.
Okay, I understand we have Bukola Idowu back. Bukola, are you there? Can you hear us from the Lagos studio now? Okay, thank you. Well, the point you were making about the point you were making about collusion, INEC responsibility with regard to its staff, and then of course your reaction to that press conference by the People's Democratic Party Presidential Campaign Council spokespersons.
Well, I think if political parties are not, granting press briefing now and are not talking now, I will be disappointed, because this is the time they also have to have a lot of strategic communication. Of course, but what we have seen from a lot of party is already building confidence and then try as much as possible to also accuse opponents of want to collude with other political, with INEC to thwart the whole process. It's expected, and I think I like the way Dr. Abade put it, that it is not only PDP. We've seen Labour talk, we've seen APC talk, and we also even expect AAC to even come out and talk, and put every other political party to also come out and talk. Having said that, but the most important thing is we need to calm nerves down. We need to make sure, we need to just wait for the results INEC will announce. The Electoral Act also says that if you are not really satisfied with that, then we approach the court, the tribunal, the appeal court, the Presidential Election Tribunal for presidents, for presidential election, and then election petition tribunal at the state level for governorship and the rest. So we need to wait for that. We've seen pockets of, we've seen violence in few places, and we don't also want it to be escalated. And I think that has to be put in place, why they have the right, and I like the way they have been communicating. So, but going back to what I said the other time, the point I was trying to make the other time, Dr. Abati, is about, I said in 2019, after 2019 election, we have 1,436 electoral offenders across the countries. Across the country, the one arrested by EFCC, ICPC, Nigerian police, Nigeria military, the Nigerian army. Now, putting all of them together, and don't forget they also had a joint press briefing, and then these are the electoral offenders. And this is 4 years after Dr. Abati. We have not seen anybody going in and out of courts because you are, you committed election offense. We have not seen an ex-convict that we can say, look, because because due to election offense. So what it means, and let me quickly also go to Ekiti in the last election. Arrests were made for vote buying. We saw that on the news. And then till today, who can tell us who has been convicted, who has been going in and out of court, who have been granted bail, or what happened? The Nigerian police will say, oh, they've conducted our investigation, we pass it to INEC. INEC will say we don't even have power and resources. I mean, we don't even have all this capacity to even add this to that. So what are we seeing? We are now beginning to see that, look, things are happening because people are not paying for their offense. And so one thing you need to know is that when sentence against an evil deed is not speedily executed, the heart of man will continue to perpetrate such evil. And that is what we have seen. So what we expect to see now is that those people without immunity, who have been able to go against the provisions of the Electoral Act, should be arrested, should be prosecuted, and we want to see someone who will be fined, who will be convicted, because he has flagrantly disregard the provision of the law. But if this is not done, we are come back to the same place we have been before. And again, we also need to make sure, and I think everybody need to join that advocacy now. Election Offense Commission must be in place, because those governors that have been accused, those people that have immunity, after, and I say after they finish their time, they need to come and answer for this, because we have it. Don't forget, something happened in the UK where the Prime Minister was actually making a call. You understand? And then people now begin to say, hey, you are not with seat belt. Before he get back to his place, he has a ticket already. So what it means is that we must imbibe and not reward impunity. After their tenure, they need to also answer for it.
Okay, thank you very much, Abu Kolaido. Thank you, Mr. Victor Okha. It was Mao Zedong who said, politics is war without bloodshed.
True.
War is politics with bloodshed. In Nigeria, we don't want war. We don't want bloodshed. And I go back to your point, Victor Okha, that all the political parties and their spokespersons and the gladiators should please calm down.